Great. Okay, so welcome back to the Wine Social Enterprise Summit. My name is Kat Lecock. I'm the host of the summit. It's fantastic to have you join us either live or if you're watching on the replay. And I'm really, really pleased today on our last day. We've still got another webinar after this, but it's great to have Kathy Wong from Morocco. I hope I said that right this time, Kathy, because I always say it the wrong way.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's really, really exciting because me and Kathy have been connected online, well, I suppose it's sort of nearly a year now, following each other's progress. And kind of we wanted to talk today at the end of the summit about how, well, a couple of things really. We'll talk about Kathy's sort of journey, which is really fascinating, but also about how social entrepreneurs are connecting like this online and supporting each other and providing a community that's predominantly online as well. So, but Kathy, before we get into all that and we hear more about your Morocco story and crazy journey of TV, just tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a social entrepreneur.
Okay, God, it seems like so long ago now. Thanks, first of all, for having me on your show, Kat. Look, I had been an entrepreneur since I was 23. I ran a design branding business for, 19 years. And that was fantastic, where we worked with large corporates doing their branding communications. And then, my only goal at that stage was to make money and be able to retire early, which I did. And then I went into retirement for 10 years. And during that time, I did all the things I wanted to do, like travel, move out into the country and have a tree change. I even took up jewelry and taught jewelry for 4 years. And then, there was something, though, that kept calling me. And during the time I'd run my design business, I'd always given time to charities around the area of children and donated. And I always said that one day I'd do something big with kids. And I suppose my one day came when I decided that I was going to take up the cause of children in poverty. And that brought me out of retirement and led me to start my social enterprise, Morocco. And how that actually came about was somehow I read an article about these children, that had no shoes, that there's over 300 million of these children. And that really rocked my world because, I'm a typical woman. I love shoes. So I couldn't, imagine that people could go, about their life with never owning a pair of shoes, and that these children had no access to education because they didn't own shoes, because of fear of disease being spread through their feet by allowing them to go to school without shoes. And that's where the journey began.
So tell us a little bit more about what Morocco does, what solution it provides, and what social impact it delivers. You've already given us a hint there, but tell us a little bit more.
Okay, so the solution that we came up with was a one-for-one model. I had been influenced by Tom's, probably the most successful one-for-one model out of the States, where every pair of flip-flops that we sell, I have to say flip-flops so that people understand universally, they leave positive messages in the sand, such as live love, be free. And then for every pair we sell, we then manufacture a pair of canvas shoes, which are deemed as school shoes in India. Mm-hmm. And we give a child in poverty in India a pair of these shoes so that they can either go to school or stay in school. So it's a pretty simple model, really. So far, the impact on that is mostly measurable. Well, there's two impacts we're measuring. One is from the perspective of the number of shoes. So that's heading towards the 9,000 figure. And then there is the other level of impact, which is a little bit more difficult to measure, but it's really, having these children say to us, what a difference we've made to their life. They now have self-esteem, they have worthiness, characteristics that they had never experienced because they felt nobody loved them, nobody cared about them.
Yeah, really, really important stuff, and a really, really, in many respects, and I don't mean to diminish it, but it's quite a simple model. The buy one, give one. And I think that's what's brilliant about the whole business and why it works is because particularly because you're based in Australia usually, but I'm sure that the flip-flop or thong market there is quite significant, and certainly for most parts of the year. And so there's a great market there, and why not then be able to, buy a pair of flip-flops and give a pair of shoes to a child in need as well. Really, really great model.
Well, I think, with social enterprises, that as you would know, Kat, right, the simpler the model, the better, because we're dealing with very, very complex issues. So the more we can simplify it, then I think the easier it is to run such a business.
And particularly for the consumer that's buying those flip-flops, it's easier for them to understand as well.
Well, this is right. But even then, it's amazing how many people still don't understand the concept. We spend, so much time educating, and it's like, I thought it was a very simple concept, but because, all of this is still relatively new. I mean, the people who know Toms and who are consumers in the space get it, but those who are fairly new and green to this sector still have a little bit of trouble getting it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I know your journey's kind of developed since the Moloko startup. And how long has Moloko been going now, Kathy?
It's about 4 years now. Yeah.
Your journey's kind of evolving, and you since more recently sort of set up Crazy Dreamers TV. So tell us what that is.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things that became really evident to me, Kat, in this space is just how little awareness there is about, these sorts of models and all the good that people like us are doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I really felt that, for me to have more impact, I need to educate the wider community. It's all well and good that over the last 4 years, I've seen the development of so many more people coming into the space, which is wonderful. But, there's no point in just preaching to the converted.
Yeah.
So we need to in order to create this movement, we need more people involved from the perspective of consumer, media, corporates, everybody, And so I just felt compelled to tell the stories of all these other amazing people I keep meeting because, like me, I've struggled with, creating the brand awareness because we have such little budgets, in fact sometimes no budget. And so it's like, so I understood the problems that other social enterprises were having. So I thought, well, can't I just go and share these stories? And as you said, that the piece around connection, which is just so imperative, and it's made possible so easily now through social media, allowed me to reach out to people all over the world. And so I had the opportunity to go and travel and go and meet these people in person and share these stories. So that's how Crazy Dreamers started. And the reason for that name, Moloko actually means dream crazy. And so I took a bit of a play on that, because I really feel that all of us have to be quite crazy to be doing this sort of work.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's brilliant, and I think it, not only fits with that initial branding that you did around Moloko, but it is that kind of sense, that we are all a little bit crazy for being social entrepreneurs. Not in a bad way, just in you have to be quite different and take risks and have unique ways of thinking and do things differently. So
exactly, to chase those dreams, right? So I'm actually proud to be a crazy dreamer, a dream crazy person, whichever way you want to say that, And I think we live in a world now where not enough people are dreaming, or if they are dreaming, they're far too scared to chase those dreams.
Yeah, no, really, really important that people do that as well. So what is it that, while you've been on this journey, sort of taking, is it a year out or 6 months, you've been traveling around the world?
It's almost 6 months now. Yeah.
So connecting with different social enterprises, different social entrepreneurs around the world. What is it that's you maybe have really discovered or found really fascinating meeting social entrepreneurs in different parts of the world?
Yeah, well, I suppose lots, and I'm still coming to terms with all the things. It's a big journey of processing all the information, because I've been so busy flitting here, flitting there. There hasn't been a lot of time to process it all. But of late, I've been starting to think about this more. And I suppose one of the big surprises to me for a while now, and I noticed this already back home in Australia, is the piece around connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I see that we're living in a world with so much disconnection and people crying out for that. And I see that a lot of the problems that we're facing, which social entrepreneurs are wanting to address, really are around human connection.
Yeah.
And I have a very simple view of life where, you know, I think that most of the issues that we're suffering from in the world all stem from this lack of connection, people crying out for this connection. And so I have been constantly stunned at the lack of connection, collaboration, and community across the world. I see that some countries have probably more issues than others, but it exists everywhere that I go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also seeing that in particular the youth seem to be suffering from that on even a bigger scale. And I think my interpretation of that is that, you know, the youth have grown up in this world of social media, and so they're connecting that way. And look, it's wonderful, don't get me wrong. I mean, you and I would not have connected right without it. However, that piece around face-to-face communication cannot replace the digital communication. And so I'm seeing issues of alienation, loneliness, which I have never seen in the time I was growing up. I was not aware of the degree of this isolation and lack of communication that I'm seeing. And so this is really very concerning to me.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, carry on.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I think it's particularly concerning. I mean, my background, professional background, is as a dialogue facilitator and bringing communities together for dialogue to have conversations. And I think it's really powerful when you do that, particularly the work I did around having really quite difficult conversations that people didn't really want to have or found quite, were controversial topics to talk about, let's say. And what for me, the risk of this is if we don't build and support human connection and conversation and dialogue that is real, face-to-face with people and building that community, when we've got so many global challenges to solve, we're missing opportunities to build those connections, to build relationships, to find solutions together and to really understand the other and the other perspective, because they have to be collaborative solutions. We can't just create solutions for ourselves or for the small people, the small group of people that think like us, act like us, do what we do. They have to be collaborative solutions that kind of cross those social, economic, cultural boundaries as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's really floored me, because I've come from an entrepreneurial background, I find that most entrepreneurs understand collaboration. They understand how to network, even though I don't really like that word network. Whereas I found that I would say the majority of social entrepreneurs, many of them have not come from an entrepreneurial background. They've come with, beautiful big hearts wanting to make a difference. And so there's a number of reasons why they don't reach out and, connect and collaborate. One, there's, sometimes egos, or they're scared to, or they don't know how to, or they feel that they're too busy, and they don't understand that in doing so, it's actually part of marketing, it's part of doing business.
Yeah.
And so that has really floored me, because for all the reasons that you've just mentioned, I think that, reaching out, connecting, collaborating is probably more imperative in the area of social entrepreneurship than even just, the normal entrepreneurship.
No, absolutely. And I think in two ways, not only because of building the solutions, building your business, kind of finding out about knowledge and expertise and bringing that within as a great way to collaborate, but also building connection with your customers. Because I see that particularly in the work I do when I'm supporting social entrepreneurs, think about how they reach out and communicate with their customers, a real resistance around sales, because people traditionally haven't had positive experiences of sales, or they have a perception of what sales is and don't want to do that because of where their values are and their how they align themselves in their business. But I think it's that they've missed the reality that sales is a very natural, certainly trading, and I think this has come up in other webinars, like trading is a very natural thing that's been happening for generations, and it's really just about trading and communicating and building relationships with other people.
Exactly.
I'm giving you something of value and you're giving me something of value back. And yes, in most cases that's now a monetary exchange, but it doesn't always have to be like that either.
No, exactly. And then also, again, quite a few social entrepreneurs that I've met have a mindset around money. And not necessarily seeing money as good, but money because of what's happened in the past too, But that's the point that, we're wanting to push, that, money can be used for good. We need to make money. We need to, create these businesses that are profitable because then they're sustainable, and then we can actually make more of a difference. But there's still sometimes this I suppose reluctance to look at the money side, but that's imperative. So yeah, that's also been interesting as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's a thing, a global phenomenon that lots of us that do connect internationally, we see that with lots of different entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs, that kind of money mindset that's really kind of limiting their ability to reach out and kind of make sales or promote what they're doing because of a very negative perception of what money is and what it can be, and kind of I think lots of us are trying to change that rhetoric around money.
Exactly.
Can make really positive things, and if you have that money, you get to choose with what you do with it within your business, or how you invest it. So yeah, it's trying to change that conversation, but if we don't have those connections and we don't have those conversations, we can't change that rhetoric either, can we?
That's right. And the further thing I'd like to add to all of that is the piece around empathy. We're now starting to hear in the business world a lot more discussion about empathy, right? And I think that's also very key, because as you've said, if we don't have the relationships, the conversations with our customers, how can we build empathy? And empathy is a very, very powerful tool, and it's becoming, as I said, it seems becoming more and more prominent in these discussions in the business world, not just in social entrepreneurship, but in entrepreneurship in general. So that's another very important piece that can only be gained through connection.
Yeah, no, definitely. So are there any other things that you've kind of picked up like in your travels that have been like really inspiring, exciting, other sort of social enterprises, like little stories that you could share?
Yeah, well, look, I think another thing that, you and I went to the World Social Enterprise, right, in Scotland, and met there for the first time, as we did with a few other people like Rian. And, what was very encouraging to see was the way in which Scotland have really been able to accelerate their sector because of the huge government support that they have had. And so, to see that, I mean, this is the thing, the conversation has to be had with everybody. And we can't do any of this with just, one or two sectors. And so I was really encouraged to see how much initiatives and collaboration was going on there with the governments. And then, hoping that other governments will start to follow suit. And I am starting to see that. You look at countries like Portugal, where they're rebuilding their economy through social enterprise and all the initiatives that are being created there. So, let's hope that we're going to see a lot more of that happening around the world. I'm encouraged by seeing the youth and seeing how we're starting to see more and more youth stand up and become leaders in their community, because they're starting to understand that they can make a difference. Making a difference is not restricted to your age or your experience, And we saw a number of youth leaders there from around the world, right, discussing their social enterprises that they have started, or, you know, initiatives that they're about to start. So that was extremely positive and encouraging. And so that really, really excites me. I mean, you would know with your work, right, Kat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll come on to that. And actually, it was really interesting this morning. It's perfect timing because Australian youth seem to be leading the way at the moment, because they're on the news this morning.
Yay!
They've been walking out of schools and demanding, they know they don't have the power in terms they can't vote, but they have walked out of school today in Australia, yesterday, presumably.
I haven't heard this. Tell me more.
To demand that the government focuses more on global climate change. Right. So there are hundreds of schools and school children that have walked out of their schools in the last 24 hours in Australia. So Australia is the way.
Wow, I hadn't heard about this. I'm going to have to go jump on and read.
Yeah, no, it's really, really exciting to see. So that's definitely one of the ways we connected as well, Kathy, I know, because for those people that don't know, I don't think I've really mentioned it much on the summit, but as I started as a social entrepreneur in 2013 with my friend Jen Bourne, setting up Solutions to the Planet, which is an education programme here in the UK, encouraging young people to use their STEM, so science, technology, engineering and math skills, but with a view to create sustainable businesses. And I mean businesses that are, you know, thinking about sustainability in the green economy, that create solutions to those sustainability challenges, many of which we've talked about on this summit. And Kathy, I know you're super passionate about supporting young entrepreneurs as well, and helping young people think differently about how they could run businesses, create solutions to sustainability problems as well, and be more entrepreneurial, regardless of whether they become entrepreneurs. But actually, I think one of the things that we're both passionate about is helping young people develop those entrepreneurial skills so they can bring that even if they go into a job that's where they're an employee.
Well, this is right, because I think you and I had a brief chat about this, you know, that not everyone has to be entrepreneurs, you know, because we also need the intrapreneurs. And that's also another piece, you know. It's about, though, being aware of, it's an attitude, right? And so having that mindset, you can go into work for an organization where you can apply that same mindset, and how powerful that is, because we need people in corporates to also come on board in government. And so we need influencers, you know. So having influencers within these various sectors that have the entrepreneurial thinking is another way we're going to create change, because we don't want everyone to be entrepreneurs. We need people to work in these organizations as well. And so the other piece too, with what you've just talked about, the example in Australia, is what is exciting is to see how young people are driving the change around traditional methods of education, because those traditional methods of education are not working. You know, we're seeing people go through the tertiary education system. I know in Australia, there was a stat I saw recently where it's taking an average of 4.8 years for a university graduate to get a job in their chosen profession. And then many of them are in debt. And then many of them are actually asking, why have I spent 4 or 5 years of my life studying? I don't even know why I've done that. I don't really want to do this.
Yeah. And I think that's a challenge everywhere, isn't it? Because actually, I know here in the UK we have a similar debate in terms of there's lots of opportunities, you know, to learn on the job, to do apprenticeships, to just go and work, because actually in work you learn so much about yourself, how you work in a team, what you're interested in. You find out very quickly if you're doing a job that you don't like, and like looking at other opportunities and seeing what else is out there. So yeah, I think it's thinking differently about, and also now I think in an information age, there is different ways to access knowledge and different ways to learn, which I think is potentially going to be a real challenge to the structured education system as well. And I think, you know, lots of people are seeking out different ways to learn, and you know, particularly those who are entrepreneurial are more likely to just, you know, because they have the tools around them to just give things a go. And we were just talking earlier with Tom Dawkins from Start Some Good about, you know, actually for lots of entrepreneurs, they're less worried about failure because it's part of the learning process, and kind of just like trying things out, taking those risks and keep, you know, and kind of reiterating the ideas that they have. So I think there's a lot of change in that area as well of education, like you said, in terms of what's around the corner.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, that whole area of, you know, failing, you know, which is bringing up a lot of conversation. It's so imperative, as you said, that everyone gets out there and just, you know, it's experiential learning, right? Not learning from the old textbook or the rote type system, you know, getting out there and just diving in and trying. And it's through that process you will learn so much, which is definitely the whole one of the foundations of entrepreneurial learning.
And I think one of the big themes that have come out of this summit is that things are changing at such a rapid pace. A lot of the old theory, particularly when you think about the economic theory or business theory, doesn't actually apply to the problems and the situations that we find ourselves in and the solutions that we need to discover. And so actually, I'm all for actually encouraging universities, for example, bringing in much more, and I know lots of universities are doing this, but bringing in lots more examples of current social entrepreneurship practice and kind of helping people think of business for the future differently, whether they're social enterprises or not. But, you know, bringing, you know, the need for bringing in and being a sustainable business, thinking about the social and environmental impact that you're having on society is increasingly important. And if that's not part of core business schools, then it's going to be completely irrelevant. You know, your degree will be irrelevant because that's not the world we live in.
That's right. It is wonderful to see them bringing in hubs and, you know, accelerator programs and all of that, because I suppose they have to change with the times, because, you know, most young people are demanding that, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be in the world of millennials soon, and the millennials don't want to work for organizations that are all about just making money. They want to work for organizations that are going far beyond that, with looking at purpose, you know. So we're moving towards, I suppose we already are in that purpose-driven economy, and that's going to become more and more apparent as these millennials start to rise in the workforce.
Definitely. So tell us more about, because I know you've got kind of plans to support more young people to get into entrepreneurship. Can you share a little bit about what your plans are around that?
Well, it's really still in exploratory stage, you know, but I've been spending the time connecting with people who have been or are educators, other entrepreneurs, in particular other youth organisations who are working in this space, because I'm very interested in peer-to-peer learning. You know, what I want to do is something where we've got young people actually inspiring young people and delivering and facilitating programs. Sure, we need to have, you know, old chooks like me as well involved, because we need to have, I suppose, all the age groups. And, you know, the youth obviously need the experience of older mentors, but at the same time, I'd like to see, you know, programs where we can combine the old and the young, really. So I'm still in that exploratory stage, looking at best practices around the world, to learning from everybody I can. So I can't really say too much about, we don't have anything yet there to deliver. But as I said, the collaboration piece is huge. And just to speaking more and more to the youth and hearing what they want, because there's no point putting out something that they don't want, you know, and so really getting very, very clear on how we can assist.
Yeah.
So watch this space, I suppose, Kat.
Yeah, no, brilliant. No, definitely. It sounds like a perfect time in Australia when you get back there to be using that youth energy that's there in terms of them standing up and shouting out proudly that they want change. For anybody that's watching live, if you have any questions, please do type those in the chat box and we'll ask Kathy those before we finish. But the other thing that I just wanted to sort of end on really, Kathy, was this thing going back to how we connected and this amazing world that I discovered about 18 months ago online. Because here in the UK, we have a great, and lots of people say it's probably one of the best ecosystems in the world for social entrepreneurship, in that we have a lot of, we have had a lot of government funding into the sector. We have other investors and social investment funds developing. We've got incubator programs, accelerator programs, a great ecosystem of support from all sorts of different organisations that's quite structured and on the ground. But what was interesting to me, and because I'd kind of come through some of that stuff as a social entrepreneur, was when I got online and started trying to find social entrepreneurs online, there was this whole other world that was operating and kind of communicating, multiple groups, support programs, informal kind of support coaching courses. And that's been really fascinating to me as well, to see that there's this kind of international online community of social entrepreneurs as well, and even people that don't yet call themselves social entrepreneurs but blatantly are. Yes. They just haven't come across that term yet, all connecting and collaborating and supporting one another. And I was interested in what's your experience of that, and has that helped you as a social entrepreneur at all as well?
Oh yeah, look, most definitely. Even from the time I started, I think, I don't know, there might have been about 10 or 20 groups at the most. And now I don't know how many groups they are. And it's interesting, even like with you and I, we know so many other people through groups, right? Mm-hmm. So it's becoming small. It's becoming bigger, but also smaller because of the ability for us to connect, play in different groups, and communicate that way. And most definitely in terms of Moloko in the flip-flops, we would not have been able to get the results we have without, being online and all the connections we've met through that way. I know even with the people who've taken us on board, retailers, most of them have come through online. The media opportunities, the blogging opportunities have all come through online. And so I think it's really, really exciting. And I know too, when I first started, all my advisors had kept saying to me, you're spending far too much time online. And I said, no, I really don't believe I am. And when I started, I thought I was a dinosaur coming into the online world, because I had resisted doing Facebook whilst I'd been in retirement. I didn't feel I needed to do that. And so I really felt like I was coming at it from a very, low level. But then I realized how quickly that I was actually probably more of a pioneer, particularly in the area of networking with people there. And so, for me, everybody that I meet who says, oh, but you spend so much time online, I go, but think of it as another communication tool. Would you rather be cold calling, instead? Yeah. I have found this to be much more powerful in terms of making more contacts quicker than the cold call. It's not to say that you don't sometimes still have to do the cold call, but it certainly has opened up so many more opportunities. And I think it's also very interesting what you said earlier, Kat, about there's a whole heap of people out there in, say, for instance, the entrepreneurial world who are already acting as social entrepreneurs but didn't even realize that. They don't put that term on there. And then the other area that I've seen that's been huge for me in Facebook groups has been the travel groups. I have found so many, especially female travelers, who are doing social enterprise, but they didn't realize, or they're very interested, because it seems that people who do a lot of travel, they also have this keen desire to make a difference. Yeah. They kind of go hand in hand. So that opens me up to a whole world of people making a difference that I never thought about, who I can find in the travel area.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's a great tool for what I found particularly useful is learning about what's going on outside the UK, and connecting with social entrepreneurs that are dealing with different challenges and problems, and tackling and creating different new solutions to problems that wouldn't necessarily be the case here in the UK. They're specific to where they're located, but they're still fascinating to see how they're developing their businesses and learning from that and kind of collaborating. But then also, like you said, there's also, it's not just the entrepreneurs, there's whole communities of consumers and citizens that are looking for alternative products and services, who are, interested in kind of purchasing with a particular purpose in mind, about having that extra added value, about thinking about where things are produced from, and human rights that have gone, have people been considered in the supply chain and things. And I think that as well, for those social entrepreneurs that aren't operating online at the moment, just there is a huge community of consumers out there looking for those products and services online. And if you're not on there, sharing your story, sharing what you're doing, you're missing a huge business opportunity to build those relationships and find new customers as well.
Well, this is right. And, also there's, tribes like digital nomadic tribes, which seems to be getting bigger and bigger too. And again, there's so many people in that space wanting to make a difference who are or thinking, of social enterprise, already are also social entrepreneurs. So that's, again, another world that I was exposed to, which I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, like you said about the travellers, it makes sense now that I've kind of come across them and spoken to them and things like that, because they're travelling around the world and seeing particularly some of the environmental challenges, that maybe somebody like me who's not travelling sees on the news, but they're actually in contact with it because they're going to places and seeing the results of the, even just as, a simple example in terms of the plastic waste and things. Or
that's right. Yeah, and in fact, a lot of people who have started social enterprises have come at it from that perspective. They've seen these things, they've experienced it. They go, well, how can I help then and make that difference? With myself, I didn't actually see this. I read it in an article, and it wasn't until a year after I actually had launched my business that I then went out over to India, and then I actually saw for my own eyes and then was able to, dive deeper. But most people usually come at it from, they have traveled to these various countries and seen, these situations, and then that's that's motivated them to then want to start a business to help.
Yeah, no, definitely. Great, Kathy. Well, this has been fantastic talking to you. My final question I'm asking everybody on the summit is, what kind of excites you or brings you hope about the social enterprise sector over the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, well, I think, I mentioned to you the seeing firstly the youth and how they're really getting heavily involved, and, how they're really driving change. The example that you just mentioned, in Australia, I'm going to be watching that now with fascination where that goes. Also, the way in which governments are now starting to realise that they need to get behind these social initiatives, because they realise, that they can't solve all the problems of the world. So I don't know, there's so many areas really where I see a lot of hope in the fact that, you look at stats around GDP and how much social enterprises are actually contributing to the GDP of nations. And also when we look at female gender inequalities, and we look at that the social enterprise space is the first sector where women and men can be equal in their earning capacities. I mean, that's a huge thing, So there's some of the, areas that give me a lot of hope.
Yeah, no, lots there, which is brilliant. Really, really. And I completely agree with all those. There's a lot to be optimistic about, a lot to be hopeful for. And I'm really excited about the next decade of social entrepreneurship and see where everything goes. So thank you so much for joining us, Kathy, this morning. It has been brilliant chatting to you, and hopefully speak to you very soon. Oh, have we lost you? Oh, just at the right time, though, at the end. We've kind of lost connection. So just to say thank you very much for everybody watching. It was great to speak to you, Kathy, and we'll catch up again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Hosting this one